video is broadcast on Mark Levin Show channel. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to the channel.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hi, Billy Cunningham, the great American, in for the great one. I got a call a few days ago from Rich Cementa, who's the Steven Spielberg of the Mark Levin Show, asking if I could pinch hit for Mark tonight. Love doing this, love being with you. The platforms are unbelievable, and what Mark Levin does with his audience, I'm a fan of his, is great, so I'm happy to pinch it for Mark Levin. And a couple of things today. I'm watching Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, meeting with Donald John Trump, and all I could think about is what happened yesterday with Tillerson, the Secretary of State, on with Face the Nation, talking about maybe we're going to revisit the Paris Climate Accords. And when he said that, I thought to myself, what in the Hades did we do last November? As you may know, Mark and I were kind of fans of Ted Cruz because he was a constitutional Republican who believed in the foundations of this nation and understood the strength and the limitations of the American presidency. Our guy didn't win, didn't get close to winning. It came down to John Kasich, my governor. I'm broadcasting to you from Cincinnati, Ohio tonight. My governor was Kasich. One of my golfing friends was John Kasich. The last year or two, we have had a falling out. Don't see him, don't talk to him, can't deal with it anymore. So at the end of the day, we were left with clear alternatives between Trump on one hand and Clinton on the other. And I thought to myself in October and early November, look, if Hillary Clinton is elected to the presidency, we're going to maintain DACA. DACA will continue with Hillary Clinton. We're going to have the continuation of Obamacare and not repealing and replacing Obamacare. We're going to have the continuation of Obamacare. And if we have Hillary Clinton in the White House, we're going to have unlimited debt ceilings. There's going to be deal struck. The debt ceiling will be unlimited, keep going up constantly. And if we have Hillary Clinton, there's not going to be tax reform or lowering of the rates. And if we have Hillary Clinton, I know we're not going to have a border fence, and I know we're going to still be part of the Paris Climate Accord. That's if Hillary Clinton wins the presidency. Between you and I, at this point, here we are in the middle of September, almost a year after the election. Heck, it's been 10 months. It's been about 8 months since he took office. Can you tell me how the presidency of Trump is significantly different than the alleged purported presidency of Hillary Rodham Clinton? Aren't they basically about the same? So today, meeting with Macron, and tomorrow speaking at the UN, I would like to have the candidate and the person running for presidency be the one that's governing in the White House, be the one tomorrow is going to speak here in New York. I want that guy to get up before the UN and talk about the Paris Climate Accords being a giant transfer of wealth from the producing, developing, richer nations to the poorer nations. I want him to say things such as the UN the last 15 years has doubled its budget and doubled its personnel without a measurable effect. I want that guy who ran for office, who spoke in Cincinnati, who spoke in Austin, who spoke in Tampa, who spoke in Madison, who spoke in Cedar Bluffs, the guy that spoke in Sacramento, the guy that was in Wisconsin. I want that guy to be my president. And here we are, 9.5 months or so into the term, and we got zero, zilch, nada, nothing of the big issues. Now, I know Paul Ryan. I've spoken to him a few times, and he'll tell you, well, go to this website, allwe'veaccomplished.org, and we got like 300 bills that we passed. So what? That's Washington parlor cocktail games. In the minds of average Americans, like you, me, Mark Levin, and Richard Cementa, what has changed significantly? Number one, we knew that if Hillary won, DACA would be continued. And what was announced last Wednesday night, about 5 days ago? They're called now Chuck and Nancy. Came out and announced, guess what? We got a deal. We got a deal with Trump. DACA continues, no big deal, and no border fence. Isn't that Clinton's policy? Were you shocked at that last Wednesday night? Wasn't that unbelievable? And did we hear refutation, loud and proud and sassy, on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or today? Did you hear the president say no? In fact, every time the president mentions DACA of late, he sounds like Nancy Pelosi. So whenever you have a Republican president, in this case, supposedly a Republican, Donald J. Trump, he agrees with Nancy Pelosi on immigration. Is that what we voted for? Is that why you and I marched to the polls? Is that why you and I came out, some 63.5 million strong, to vote for Trump? Because we wanted the same immigration policies under the Trump administration that Hillary would have done? So if you're Trump and Chuck and Nancy, you adopt their policies on immigration, isn't that a problem? Repeal and replace Obamacare. I know that in December there were big meetings held in Trump Tower. And in those big meetings there were Christmas lights and there were Christmas trees. There were manger scenes in and around the top floors of Trump Tower. In walks Paul Ryan. In walks Mitch McConnell, the leader of the House, leader of the Senate. And they sit down with the president and the president's team to kind of walk through what's going to happen the next year, which is the year 2017. And I know they told him, Mr. President, by the Easter recess, the Easter break, we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare. Ryan promised it. McConnell promised it. Got out. Trump began talking about it. Yes, within the next 90 days. In fact, he said at one point, on my first day in office, January the 20th, first working day, January the 21st, I'm going to sign repeal and replace Obamacare because Ryan and McConnell told me they voted against it 52 times in the past 7 years. That's number one. By Easter, repeal and replace Obamacare. As we sit here now, in the middle of September, has Obamacare been repealed and replaced? Do we have a continuation of the Obama policies on immigration and DACA? Answer to both questions are yes. And so if you elect a president named Donald John Trump, and he's got the same policies or success rates on Obamacare as Hillary Clinton's administration, that's not what we voted for. About 10 days ago, because Trump is forced to deal with feckless fools like Ryan and McConnell, he strikes the deal with Nancy and Chuck on government spending, increasing the debt limit, zooming past $20 trillion like a rocket ship. The Rocket Man, Kim Jong-un, like a rocket ship. We're way past $20 trillion. So you have Democrats, not just Democrats, not even normal Democrats, but you have Democrats such as Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer agreeing with Trump on government spending and increasing the debt limit. Is that what you and I voted for? I don't think so. Because I know that Trump was promised by Ryan and by McConnell that when we raise the debt limit, which we're going to have to do, there's going to be significant spending cuts by doing so. Maybe the penny plan, reduce government spending by 1% every year for 5 years. Just 1%. 1%. So did Trump get that out of this Congress? The answer is no. The answer is hell no. So on the big issues, how about tax reform? I know for a fact, in December at all these big meetings, Ryan and McConnell told the Trumpster, by the August recess, we will have tax reform. Not just lowering the rates and repatriation of $4 trillion. We're going to completely redo the tax code. In fact, Paul Ryan was giddy. Brady, head of the House Ways and Means Committee, is going to come out by the August recess. We're going to put on your bill, Mr. President, a complete reformation of the tax code. The tax returns will be in the back of a postcard. We're going to lower the rates, and it'll be economic boom. So here we are past the August recess. By this point, middle of September, DACA continues. No repeal and replace Obamacare. It's the law of the land. There's no less government spending, and there's no tax reform. There's no tax rate reduction at this point. There is zero, zilch, nada. I went to 2 or 3 Trump rallies, introduced him once or twice. And at every rally I heard, build that wall, build that wall. Who's going to pay for it? Mexico, Mexico, build that wall. And at those meetings in December and January, Ryan and McConnell both promised the president and his staff that by the end of next year, which in their parlance would have been the end of 2017, we're going to have a huge infrastructure bill we're going to put on your desk, and we're going to have money to start building the fence. In fact, the fence, which is already there and hundreds of miles, will be extended. That's a done deal. So there was these promises made. By Easter, repeal and replace Obamacare. By August recess, complete tax reform, doing your tax returns in the back of a postcard. And by the end of 2017, we're going to have infrastructure package of $1 trillion, and we're going to have the border fence well built and on its way. So here we sit, 10 months after the election, some 8.5, 9 months after the inaugural. What has been accomplished? Zero, zilch, nada. And then the other shoe to drop yesterday with Rex Tillerson on Face the Nation. The president wants to revisit the Paris Climate Accords, whose main function it is to destroy Western economies, to lower them to the level of Somalia, and also to make us feel guilty because we want to produce energy. So you tell me, my fellow Americans, how is the presidency of Trump legislatively, give him credit for Neil Gorsuch and the federal judges, give them complete credit, great job there, Federalist Society, good work. But legislatively, what has been accomplished, what has been done? The answer is nothing, less than nothing, zero, zilch, nada. And watching Brady this morning, watching the Sunday morning talk shows yesterday, now it looks as if tax reform is in complete jeopardy because repealing and replacing Obamacare would be easy compared to tax reform, compared to immigration reform. Easy stuff. So we sit here. Okay, Mr. President, Mr. Trump. Okay, Republicans. We gave you the House. We gave you the Senate. We gave you the presidency, and you give us nothing, zero, zilch, nada. So I've had it up to here with all of Washington. Most of these things, let's face it, whether it's immigration, repealing and replacing Obamacare, less government spending, tax reform, border fence, all that kind of stuff, is kind of on the legislative side of the table. If Ryan and McConnell would have produced those bills, Trump would have signed it. But the Paris Climate Accords and DACA are completely on Trump's side. It looked to me like Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner, who are moderate to liberal Republicans, if there are such things, moderate to liberal Americans, control the thinking in the White House. Now that Bannon's gone, Reince Priebus is gone, he has scoured clean conservatives out of the White House. What's left are so-called New York Republicans. The Charles Percy crowd is what's left. And it doesn't give me, Bill Cunningham, the great American, a warm and a fuzzy. So, tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me how Mark Levin and I aren't thinking correctly. Tell me how tomorrow at the UN is going to be significantly different. Let's take some calls. As always, the line for Mark Levin, the great one, is 1-877-381-3811. 381-3811, the Mark Levin Show. Also, I've read the book. You should too. Also, Rediscovering Americanism. Been out about 5 or 6 weeks, doing great. But tomorrow is going to be the day when Emmanuel Macron, president of France, met today. Tomorrow, you're going to watch this president. He should do tomorrow at the UN what he did in Saudi Arabia, speak truth to power to the sheikhs and the mullahs there in Saudi Arabia. Will he do it? I have my doubts, but I want something done. I want something done. It angers me because as a great American, I worked tirelessly after the convention to elect Donald J. Trump. Because it wasn't because I thought he was a constitutional scholar. It's because I thought he would sign the bills passed by Reagan, passed by Ryan and McConnell, and we would have someone doing these big things. And it's time for us, you and I, who generally support Donald J. Trump, to stand up and say, you must do more. And somehow we must. Once again, 877-381-3811. Bill Cunningham, the great American, and for the great one, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin.
So as a normal American, I think I'm normal. Are you normal? I think I'm normal. Are you normal? Do you think it's a good idea for Trump to agree with Democrats, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, when it comes to government spending? That's a good idea. We agree with you, Nancy, on government spending. We agree with you, Nancy, on immigration. She came out of the meeting Wednesday night and said the agreement contains not a dime for Trump's wall, and the Dreamers are put on a long glide path toward U.S. citizenship. Among enthusiastic Trump backers such as myself, I'm disillusioned And I'm wondering, where do we go from here? And when Trump cut the deal on government spending, how do you cut a deal if you're a normal Republican with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer on the level of government spending? How do you do that? It pulled the rug out from under the GOP budget hawks, and it made a promise to not preserve the country that we grew up in from endless third world invasions. The DACA thing was a circumstance. It's not just 800,000. Get rid of that number in your head. It is not 800,000. The actual number is more like 2.5 to 3 million, because part of that deal is chain migration. Mothers, fathers, children. The average age of a DACA recipient is now 23 years old. So you throw on top of the 800,000 mom and dad, siblings, children, grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles. What's left? 2 to 3 million Nicaraguans from and elsewhere from Central and South America, maybe Venezuela, coming into America. And all that does is tell the next generation of DACA recipients every few years, because of Pelosi and Schumer and Trump, we're going to have wave after wave of amnesty. Did you think it's a wise political move for our president to agree with the Democrats on amnesty for illegal aliens? That's what's happening. DACA, allegedly, is going to happen. No border wall. Now, if you throw in your chit, if you throw in your whole card, you throw in your ace of spades, and you say, okay, I'll agree with DACA. You better get a border fence. You better get E-Verify. You better get rid of chain migration. You better have a bill on migration based upon merit. Merit. Not if you break the law and come here illegally. If you get those 4 or 5 things, okay, give the DACA in a limited way, but get those other matters, the border wall to stop the migration, the E-Verify, no chain migration, merit immigration, okay, as a normal American, accept those 800,000, but not 2 to 3 million. We got these other things. But Trump doesn't think like that. The last person that speaks to him, he agrees with. God forbid if he would have dinner with Bernie Sanders someday next week. Heck, we may have single-payer health care system. Bernie Sanders comes out. We're repealing and replacing Obamacare. We got a single health care system. I just had dinner with the president. Why can't Mark Levin have dinner with the president? Bill Cunningham, live with you, in for Mark Levin. Hi, Billy Cunningham, the great American, in for the great one, Mark Levin, tonight. And before I go to the American people, to Kevin, Doug, Ken, Beverly, Bruce, and thousands of others, millions listening, thousands on hold, one last thought. Tonight's going to be the 4th night of purported rioting in the great city of St. Louis. In 2011, a convicted drug dealer named Anthony Lamar Smith was identified by police officers as dealing in the business of dealing heroin. He then is observed with a gun in a parking space. Police officer Jason Stockley pulls up behind him, and Anthony Lamar Smith becomes a fleeing felon in possession of a firearm illegally under disability, having been convicted multiple times of dealing in heroin, knew what was going to happen going back to prison, so he runs the back of his vehicle into the police side. He then positions his car in such a way as to try to run down and kill 2 cops in uniform, pulls away at a high rate of speed. The cops get in their damaged car and chase him, goes on a high-speed chase through residential areas, putting at risk thousands of innocent people. He then is stopped, and the police officer see him brandish a gun, a revolver, and Officer Jason Stockley fires 5 times, killing Anthony Lamar Smith. Watching the media tonight, CBS News, NBC, and ABC talks about a white police officer killing a black motorist. Is that an editorial opinion, or are those a recitation of facts? Is it also fair to say that a white police officer shot a black fleeing felon who was dealing heroin trying to kill those police officers? It depends. If all you hear about this case is what the mainstream media tells you, you would think, quote, as a black motorist, you're constantly in jeopardy of being shot by a white police officer like Darren Wilson, who shot Michael Brown and killed him in Ferguson, Missouri, because Michael Brown tried to murder police officer Darren Wilson in uniform in his car. Those are the facts determined by the FBI and the Department of Injustice underneath the leadership of Barack Hussein Obama. But to watch the media cover this thing, I see it report after report, a black motorist was killed by a white police officer. Oh, really? How about a black fleeing felon who was dealing death in the black community, who tried to kill a police officer, was shot during the commission of a felony? When you proceed away from a cop, having tried to kill him at a high rate of speed, that is a fleeing felon who, while he's doing it, is committing a felony while doing it. I've practiced law for 34 years. I'm a former assistant attorney general of the state of Ohio. I think I know what it is. I'm telling you right now, the media has a diatribe, has a viewpoint, has a bias that they always express subjectively during their supposed objective reporting that communicates lies to easily misled individuals. And lastly, before I go to the calls, I've got thousands on hold, before I go to the calls, probably 90% or more of the so-called, quote, protesters in St. Louis or Dallas or Baton Rouge or Madison are normal people who are simply misled into believing that cops are out there every day with the intent of killing people, and these are just individuals that don't think right. There's another 5 percentile, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and anarchists, who want to destroy America, who want to destroy the country that you and I love. They're not in the business of building up. They're in the business of tearing down. Black Lives Matter protest in Dallas directly led to the murder of 5 Dallas police officers, 3 officers killed in Baton Rouge, and 2 officers murdered in New York City, NYPD, Ramos and Liu, who were killed by a black radical nationalist and member of Black Lives Matter who traveled to New York City from Baltimore with a specific desire and intent to hunt down cops in uniform, in patrol cars, and execute them. And this was after days and weeks and months of protest in New York City when Black Lives Matter adherents were shouting, "What do we want, dead cops? When do we want them now?" So in reaction to that, the murderer, whose name I won't use, went from Baltimore, New York City, and just hunted down 2 cops that he could execute inside their police car. Now, Black Lives Matter is a racist, radical, left-wing group who advocates the murder of police officers. You would think they would be ostracized by the mainstream media and identified by the Department of Injustice and the presidency as a hate group that advocates the murder of cops. But no. During the Obama years at the end, he met numerous times in the White House with Delray McKesson, one of the founders of Black Lives Matter, in which there were tweets and selfies taken with the president meeting with Black Lives Matter. Hillary Clinton's candidacy was endorsed by Black Lives Matter. The Democratic National Platform, the DNC platform, complemented Black Lives Matter that advocates the murder of police officers. One can imagine the outrage, as there should be, if the Trumpster meets with white supremacists in the White House. Or if white supremacists, there's one thing for white supremacists to endorse Donald J. Trump. He can't control that. He can refute what they want to do. But what if the Republican Party put in its party platform support for white supremacy? How does the Democratic Party get away with Antifa and Black Lives Matter kind of representing the Democrat Party? How does that work? Who in the world advocates the murder of police officers in uniform, in their cars, and on duty? The answer is Black Lives Matter. And that's the group complemented by the Democratic Party and not refuted or shouted down by Democrats. When what happened in Charlottesville about, a month and a half ago, the white supremacist that ran down that poor woman should spend the rest of his life in jail without any question. Without any question. Please do that. Put that guy in jail for the rest of his life. So I'm waiting for Democrats to reject and to refute what's happening in St. Louis when members of Black Lives Matter and Antifa riot, break out windows, punch cops, throw bricks at cops, and deface the home of the mayor of St. Louis, who is maybe a clown herself. But nonetheless, if white supremacists had done exactly what Black Lives Matter and other Antifa-type groups did the last 3 nights in St. Louis, all hell would break loose as we know it. But somehow the media, because it's Black Lives Matter, which is a racist left-wing group advocating the murder of cops, and Antifa, who are anarchists and criminals, that when they act in a certain way, you heard things like, well, you have to understand where they're coming from, or we got to give them space to protest. Did anyone say after Charlottesville, with white supremacists, we got to give them space. We got to give them some time. We got to let them vent. Hell, nobody said that. Me included. Mark Levin, hell no. Want nothing to do with those guys and those women. Mainly men. If you believe in the neo-Nazi or the KKK or the white supremacists, you should have no place at the table of economic opportunity or mainstream media bias at all, because you represent a hateful right-wing philosophy that has killed literally tens of millions of people, including World War II. If anyone stands with Adolf Hitler, that's the Nazi, neo-Nazi, you stand with that guy, the mustache dude, 1945, you stand with him, you don't represent anything worthwhile in this country. It is awful. And nothing in world history has ever fairly compared to what the Nazis did to the Jews, the Catholics, the Gypsies, and to Americans, Eastern, Western Europe, and the world for those 12 years of Nazi rule. That was as bad as it got. Maybe rivaled by Stalin, maybe rivaled by Mao Zedong as far as number of deaths. We're talking tens of millions and millions and millions. Awful. Antifa and Black Lives Matter compared to that are nothing, except they are a current left-wing racist groups whose rhetoric has provided encouragement to the murder of police officers in New York City, Baton Rouge, and Dallas. The law enforcement is the thin blue line between democracy and anarchy, and the anarchists want that line erased. They want it done. There are foundations of civilization. There are foundations of our society. Some of those foundations are the Constitution. Some of those foundations is a defined country with a border, maybe a border fence. Most countries have border fences. One of those foundations is law enforcement, cops, deputy sheriffs, correction personnel. Throw in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, the Coast Guard, the National Guard. Those are the foundations of order and civilization. When you chip away and break down the foundations of a building, the building will fall. And what Antifa and Black Lives Matter, the anarchists, want to do is destroy this country and replace it with something else. They consider the Founding Fathers to be white supremacists. They want to destroy the documents they wrote and replace those documents with like a socialist manifesto. So what's behind St. Louis is an effort by 1,000 to 2,000 individuals to destroy the United States of America, to bring it into an uncivilized society and bring about some sort of socialist manifesto that Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders would find most acceptable. That is what's behind St. Louis. So tonight, the fourth night, let's see what happens. There's been 180 arrests. Cops have been injured. Storefronts have been broken out. The next thing to occur is murder. And what they want to do, what Antifa and BLM wants to do, is to provoke a reaction from law enforcement resulting in someone's death or injury. What they want to do is for an individual cop to overreact to being cursed at, spit at, having red substances thrown in their body and kicked between the legs. And they want that cop to overreact and kill somebody, so they have more causes now to march protest. A cop is the thin blue line between democracy and anarchy, and they want the line erased. And they've been successful. Black Lives Matter rhetoric has encouraged the murder of cops all over the country, and great disrespect for law enforcement, the judicial system, the Constitution, statutes, the Founding Fathers, and more. Don't put me in the category supporting the Robert E. Lees and the Stonewall Jacksons. I was born in Kentucky but raised in Ohio. And those individuals represented a nation that declared war on the United States of America, resulting in the death of 600,000 military soldiers and millions of civilians. I'm not too strong on any statues of those who sought to murder my fellow Americans and murder American soldiers, and that was the Confederacy. Now, having said that, there's a part of the country that doesn't see it that way at all. So be it. Let individual communities decide whether statues go up or statues come down. That's not the point. The point is this, that police violence is extremely rare. The great majority of Americans killed by police, who deserved it, by the way, are white. According to the Washington Post, the FBI, everyone that looked at it, about twice as many Americans are killed by police that are white than black. There are instances of difficulties with individual rogue cops acting incorrectly, like in South Charleston or like in Chicago. It happens. But institutionally, there is no systemic problem with cops today. as there might have been 30, 40, 50, 80 years ago. Yes, there were problems. I was a public defender for many years. I had many of my poor black clients tell me that crap got beat out of them by cops, or that guns or knives were planted on them, and I believed them about half the time. That's not the way the world works in the 21st century. All these major cities are controlled by liberal Democrats of the most left-wing character possible, including St. Louis. There is no systemic violence by police against anyone. It doesn't happen. It's a canard. It's a hoax. The media needs to cover it that way, and the media needs to stop saying a black motorist was killed by a white cop. A black drug-dealing felon committing felonies was shot by police who brandished a gun trying to kill the cops, as he did a few minutes earlier when he tried to run the cops down in his car. But see, the Lester Holtz of this world do not see the world as normal people see it, as you and I see it. A cop provides the mechanisms that allow a civilized society to flourish. Without them, we do not have a society. We would devolve back into the Middle Ages or worse. Let's continue. When we continue, I'm going to shut the heck up and hear from you. First caller will be, it's been holding long. We'll go to Kevin, then Doug and Ken and Bruce and thousands of others. If a line becomes available, number to call is 877-381-3811. Bill Cunningham, the Great American, in for the great one, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin.
Through jibber-jabbering, let's hear from you, the American people that I've served so well and supported for so long. Let's begin with Kevin in Lenore, North Carolina. Kevin, welcome to the Mark Levin Show, hosted by the Great American. Kevin, please go ahead.
Oh, it feels great to be on the radio and everybody hear me. Awesome feeling. On Donald Trump, I gotta say I'm like most other conservatives, disgusted with his decisions to go along with Pelosi, Schumer, no tax cuts yet, the wall, et cetera, on down the line. You've made it very clear and done a good job. But I got to say, unlike most, I really wasn't surprised to see him moving this way. And a lot of people may ask why, but just his past kind of reveals kind of what he's up to now.
Kevin, Mark Levin talks about this quite often. There's got to be, if you hold office, you got to have a core set of principles. You got to have like a titanium middle of your body that you know what you believe and you want to enact your policies. And Trump never has had a core set of beliefs other than Donald J. Trump. That's his core set of beliefs. And so, but I found that much more acceptable and more palatable than looking at Hillary Clinton, because I thought with Hillary Clinton in a Republican House or a Republican Senate, not much was going to get done anyway. But, the presidential pen and the phone are quite valuable, as we learned from Obama. And so I thought, okay, I will support Trump because at least he says the right things about immigration, about Obamacare, about government spending, about tax reform, about the infrastructure, about the border fence, about the Paris Climate Accord. At least he says those things. And I figure, okay, we may not get all of them, but I know we're going to get repeal Obamacare if we elect Trump. I know we're going to have tax reform, and I know we're going to have the border fence if I get Trump, and none of those things are going to happen with Hillary because she won't sign the bill passed by the Republicans. And so I now know the Republican Party is a furtive group whose main goal is to argue, to talk, and to promote, and to decide nothing. All they do is talk, and then they talk, then they promise, and then they promise some more, and they do nothing. At least with Democrats, when you get a Democrat in office, well, like Obamacare, you're going to get Democratic left-wing social policies. I have a fear that if sometime the next week or two, Senator Elizabeth Warren and Senator Bernie Sanders get a hold of Donald J. Trump and say, let's have dinner in the White House. Well, at the end of that dinner, they're going to come out of the White House and announce we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare with single-payer health care system, Medicare for all. Whoever's the last person to speak to the Trumpster gets his or her way because Trump doesn't have a conservative titanium backbone that he can rely upon. And what concerns me is that it's just the morals of the marketplace. It's whatever's popular, whatever works. I'm not sure he's got a core. Now, having said that, I'm much happier to have the Trumpster in the White House than to have a clown, a fool, a miscreant like Hillary Clinton. Much better off because of Neil Gorsuch and the federal judges. But at the end of the day, I want the Republicans to do what they said they were going to do. And if they don't do that, then we have to get different Republicans to actually do it. Get rid of Ryan, get rid of McConnell. Bill Cunningham, the Great American. In for Mark Levin, and God bless America.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building.
Hi, this is Bill Cunningham, the Great American, sitting in for the great one, Mark Levin. Fourth straight night of protest planned in St. Louis after former officer's acquittal. And one of the things you see all the time with pictures of Anthony Lamar Smith, instead of a mugshot, instead of something of him dealing heroin, which he did on a regular basis, you have a picture of him in the media just played by CNN of some, I guess his child, about a 2 or 3-year-old, sitting on his lap, and he's acting like a doting father, who, by the way, previously spent years in prison for dealing heroin and possessing firearms. And the video is quite clear that he tried to kill 2 cops with his car. But he wasn't killed because he was, quote, a black motorist. He was killed because he was a fleeing felon who had in his possession heroin and a gun, and he tried to kill 2 cops. And while fleeing, he committed more felonies. The fleeing factor is, again, a felony. But it's amazing how the media has to take certain number of facts and boil them down and fit them into a small little container of white cop kills black motorist, as if the color had anything to do with it. So if a white heroin dealer, and most people that use heroin in America are white, if a white heroin dealer had done exactly the same behaviors as Anthony Lamar Smith, that this white cop would have said, oh, to heck with it. You can keep doing what you're doing. You can try to kill me and go 90 miles an hour into a residential area, and if you're white, I'll let you get away with that. Absolutely a bald-faced, unmitigated lie. The great majority of those killed by cops in America, rightfully, are white, not black. That these incidents are extremely rare. There's 1 million cops in America working every day, 1 million. And the number of incidents you can talk about can be boiled down to a handful out of the literally hundreds of millions of contacts every year between police officers and American civilians. Hundreds of millions. There's a handful, a dozen or two that might be questionable, as if that is systemic violence. It is not systemic. And it's not violence. It's police officers defending the American flag, defending American constitutional principles, and defending our way of life. Without those cops, the thin blue line, all hell would break loose, and there would be anarchy. There's 131 businesses the last 3 nights in St. Louis that have been partially or fully destroyed. 131. Ferguson is still not recovered. Still hasn't recovered. Have riot will follow. So individuals are bussed in, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, vandals, they protest, burglaries, robberies, arsons, they commit mayhem. Fortunately, last night, I just got the new numbers from Fox News, 181 were arrested. I pray to God they don't get out anytime soon for doing what they're doing to the good people of St. Louis. But there will be protests all over the country in support of this, whether it's here in New York or in other cities. It'll be a continual protest because it gives these degenerate individuals crying for the murder of police officers something relevant to do in their sick minds greater than themselves. So they want to march around, pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. What do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them now? They say advocate the murder of cops, which has repeatedly happened. To my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, white supremacists, bad people, violent people at times. But I'm not aware in the last few years of a police officer's death at the hands of a white supremacist. But I am aware of many, many cops killed due to the rhetoric employed, the followers of Black Lives Matter. But the media doesn't treat BLM like a hate group they truly are. The neo-Nazis, completely different category. If you claim to be a Nazi after what the Nazis did in Germany between 1933 and 1945, but you want to be part of that group, I think you're suffering from some sort of mental disease or defect. Maybe you're a paranoid schizophrenic with affective components. Something's wrong in your head if you want to have the Steve Colbert Nazi salute, which Stephen Colbert does on CBS, gives the Nazi salute. And you think like that, there's something wrong. I'm a Catholic. There's something wrong with you. You're not thinking right. If you're a white supremacist, you're not thinking right. Something's wrong. If you're a Ku Klux Klan member who lynched about 2,000 people in the South and has a racist view in God's children that are black, white, yellow, red, and brown in every description, something's wrong with you. On the other side of the fence, if you believe that police officers are systemically killing black folks, if you believe that police officers should be murdered in their police cars, kicked in the groin, have bricks thrown in their face, there's something wrong with you. You're not quite right. They need to be treated like for a mental illness or defect of one type or another. You're not thinking right. The difficulty is the Democratic Party as a group has embraced Antifa and Black Lives Matter. They've embraced them. Now that's a problem. They're not thinking right. Something's wrong. You can't let that kind of philosophy dominate. And in many major cities, New York, Chicago just had their 400th murder. 400 murders. Do you know the name of any African-American murdered? Can you mention me one name in your mind murdered in Chicago? Black. Can you give me one? Well, you've heard the name Trayvon Martin. You've heard the name Eric Garner. You've heard the name of Anthony Lamar Smith. You hear these names because the media uses it to advance their cause of attacking cops, attacking law enforcement. One of the best things that Trumpster has done is support cops. The thin blue line between democracy and anarchy are the police officers, the men and women in blue. And Trump is so right to say the problem in America is not the behavior of cops, it's the behavior of criminals. The great majority of whom numerically are white, by the way. That's the problem. The problem is the criminal element in our society. It is not the police officer. Let's continue. I'm going to quit babbling. Take your calls at 877-381-3811. Let's continue with Doug in Hoboken, New Jersey, the home, of course, of Old Blue Eyes. And, Doug, welcome to the Mark Levin Show. Doug, please go ahead.
Hey, Phil, thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
I'll make 2 points. One is I agree with what you say. Trump can't get anything done, and all the things he's promised are not getting done. But I think it's more because the Democrats are just throwing everything at him but the kitchen sink.
Everything.
And the Republicans, these guys can't put together a coherent message if you threaten them. And if this was a football game and the Democrats left the field, they still couldn't score a touchdown in 4 plays.
Reminds me of my Cincinnati Bengals. They can't score a touchdown.
Yeah, well, and they're making more money. Well,
or the Jets. The Jets stink. The Jets stink.
But, the real point here that I really want to make is everybody's, fighting over this DACA thing. You can't fix DACA right now because fixing DACA without fixing immigration is like putting a brand new wheel on a totaled out car.
Well, Doug, how about Trumpster fixing DACA, and then in exchange for that, we do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on immigration. We build the fence, get rid of chain migration, chain immigration, have E-Verify. And there's all kinds of things we can do with immigration. If the Democrats want DACA, if they want to action on deferred action for childhood arrivals, DACA, give them DACA, but what do you get in exchange? Nancy Pelosi said, we got nothing in exchange. We just gave them DACA and 800,000 more voters and get nothing back.
How about if I give you an immigration plan that'll fix DACA?
Let's do it. And I want an immigration plan that average Americans like you and I want. I want immigration based upon merit, not based upon one's bloodlines. I want an immigration plan that says you can come and go. In other words, if you want to be a migrant laborer, you want to work here, we know who you are, here's your card, here's your isometric card, we know who you are, you come and then you go. And if you got an MBA in nuclear engineering, we want you to stay in America. No more no more cellular immigration, that if you're the grandmother or grandfather of a migrant farm worker picking lettuce in California, you get to come ahead of somebody else. I don't want that. I want a southern border fence. I want no more amnesty. That's what I want.
Okay, but we have to draw a line in the sand. And until you fix immigration, you have no line in the sand to do all the things you want to do. I can give you that line in the sand. I'll give you a 2-minute plan that'll fix immigration.
Give it to me, Doug. I'm waiting.
Okay, here you go. Just understand a couple things up front real quick. You're not going to get 100% of what you want. Nobody will. You've got 11 million people here. You're not going to send them back. It's ridiculous and impractical, but we have to draw a starting point. So here's your starting point. You shut down immigration everywhere. Anybody in the system stays in the system, no new apps. You give everybody 6 months to sign in, no matter who they are. If they're illegal, 6 months to sign in. Get an application to the post office or download it. Come back with a $5,000 application fee with each one, because we're going to check you out, and you and I shouldn't have to pay for that because, A, you're not supposed to be here anyway, and B, you probably never pay taxes. So it's $5,000 per person, 10 years and up. I realize we'll have an influx of 9-year-olds. But that fee will be used to be checked out by the FBI. If you're not a criminal, what you're going to have here is a blue card. The blue card's going to have your photo and a tax ID number on it. You can take that any place and get a job during this procedure. Okay, so now you don't have to hide anymore. So we get rid of sanctuary cities without a dollar spent or a shot fired. Now these people can go anywhere in the world. Basically, they're going to have to show 10 years of gainful employment with tax returns, no government subsidies. You don't get them. All right? So we do that, and any children born to a blue card person, if that blue card person fulfills the 10-year plan, they get to stay. If not, they're deported as a non-resident.
I want to hear a border fence here somewhere.
Well, we're definitely going to have to put a border fence in. But
otherwise, we keep doing this every 10 or 20 years. We can't keep doing this.
No, you know why? Because from this moment on, anybody in this country without papers, gone. Nothing to talk about. Because everybody's going to either have a green card, a blue card, or be a citizen. So if we do this, anybody here ever is gone. Now, you want to do some penalties, then what you do, anybody who puts on somebody without a blue card, $5,000 fine per person they fine, $10,000.
And I don't want any of those 11 and 12 million ever becoming citizens until they get on the back of the line from their host country. I don't want them voting. I don't want them getting public benefits. I want to know who they are, but they get no public benefits from their criminal misbehavior. And if they want to be citizens, they go in the back of the damn line. It may take 20 years.
Well, this is going to take 10 years for them to get through, and they're going to pay taxes. Look what happens now. Look at your positives. You got 10 years of taxes. You've got no government subsidies sent to these people. Social Security system gets filled back up again. It's an even playing field for all workers, because I'm tired of this. Well, you wouldn't do the job. Well, if you pay taxes, you might not be so happy either. So we got everybody paying taxes now. And this is it. Anybody in this country without papers is gone. There's your line in the sand. You have to have a line in the sand. That took care of DACA. That took care of sanctuary cities. Look what we're about to pump into sanctuary cities.
Oh, God.
Okay? All right? So it wipes them out completely. Anybody without papers is gone. Here's your line in the sand.
Well, I'll say this. With your permission, Doug, I'm going to put the Doug from Hoboken's immigration plan before the American people and let your fellow citizens compliment or criticize it. Are you willing to do that?
Absolutely.
It's now done. Doug, thanks for your calls. What I want now is for you to think about what he just said. The 11 or 12 million here illegally cannot be given benefits for their criminal misbehavior. Somehow there's got to be a penalty paid, and they got to get in the back of the line if they want to be a U.S. citizen, and they can never vote. And I've never enjoyed the fact that you can become an American citizen if you're born here, if you're the fruit of the poisonous tree under the 14th Amendment. In most countries, if your mom and dad, if you're born in Australia and your mom is from New Zealand and your dad is from America, you're not an Australian citizen. I do not want any benefits, any good things happening to a person here illegally until they pay one hell of a price to get in the back of the line, and their kids I don't think should be American citizens for how many years I don't know. The Democrats want to replace the middle-class voters they've lost because of their failed policies with illegal immigration to take the place of middle-class voters. I don't like that. I'll tell you what, my friend from Hoboken, I'll put out your thoughts now to the American people. If a line becomes available, 877-381-3811. Bill Cunningham, the Great American, in for Mark Levin.
Mark Levin.
Mark Levin. Check out Mark at crtv.com. Read the book, Rediscovering Americanism, and check him out at marklevinshow.com. We now have the Hoboken Plan, which to paraphrase means take the 11 or 12 million illegals, give them 6 months, 9 months or so to go online, go to a post office, find out who you are, what you are, background check, pay a $5,000 fee that serves as a punishment, but also the cost of looking at who you are and where you've been. Include DACA into that to some extent. Make a fee be paid, $5,000. great border security fence so we stop waves of illegal immigration from third world poverty into America, and then allow individuals who want to come and go to come and go. There are many so-called Mexicans who come into America to work that want to go back home, but it gets too difficult, so they stay here. That card allows you to come and go. And then we have a immigration policy based upon merit, not upon genetics. A merit-based system in which thermonuclear engineers that are here from Nigeria can more easily stay, and those who are picking lettuce in California have a difficulty staying here because they have their temporary work permit, or they have the so-called blue card, a citizenship card, which is not a citizenship card, but it's a residency card. And they never become U.S. citizens until you go to the back of the line of your home country, and it may take 10 to 20 years to get to the front of the line if you want to do that. And the great majority of illegals do not want to become American citizens. They want to be able to come and go. They get trapped here, and they can't go back home, generally to Mexico. That's the Hoboken plan. How do you like it? Let's continue. Plus, we have some person calling up blaspheming me who is comparing me to John Kasich. Now, I've known John Kasich for 20 years, and we were personal friends for a very long time until August of last year when he invited the world to Cleveland and refused to show up as the host to welcome them. And we cut cords at that point. I'm done with John Kasich. In fact, I've said many times in many places, listen up, my fellow Americans. I suspect in about 1 or 2 years the Trumpster is going to say, I will not seek, nor will I accept the nomination of the Republican Party for another term as your president. I fully anticipate that Trump knows he can hold 38 to 40% of the vote. None of his supporters are ideological. They're Trump voters, not Republican or Democrat. And then if he gets 40% of the vote, he can tell the Republican Party, go ahead and nominate John Kasich, let him and probably Elizabeth Warren split the other 60% probably down the middle. It all ends up then with Trump getting 40%, Kasich getting 30%, and Elizabeth Warren getting 30%, which means Trump gets a second term. The best way for him to assure himself of a successful second term is to run as an independent, not as a Republican, not as a Democrat. Run as an independent. And by doing so, you ensure your election. Since the Republicans and Democrats would split 60%, the Trumpster wins about 38 to 40%, and he wins the presidency and keeps it. At the 50-yard line, let's continue with more. About 29 minutes after the hour when we continue calls from Boston and elsewhere. Bill Cunningham in for the great one, Mark Levin. Bill Cunningham, the great American, in for Mark Levin, who's on sabbatical, listening to a Tibetan monk hum aimlessly in the Himalayan mountain ranges. So Mark Levin will be back tomorrow night. I'm with you tonight. And I'm waiting for that moment, which will occur when Donald John Trump says, I will not seek, nor will I accept the nomination of the Republican Party for another term as your president. An independent cannot win the presidency, but an independent president can win re-election because you're automatically on all the state ballots, automatically have all the money you ever need. Of course, Trump proved in the last election you're going to have 30% of the money and get more votes than the person spending 70%. He's not a Republican. Talk to Ryan and McConnell about that. Ryan, during the fall campaign, said he would not appear with the nominee of the Republican Party. So the so-called cloth coat country club Republicans want nothing to do with the Trumpster. And if you're a Democrat, you think he's the Antichrist. And so, assuming you believe, as I believe, that Trump will get the 37 to 40% of Trump voters, leaving the two national parties about 60 to 63% to share, probably equally. That guarantees the re-election of the president. Then he can announce from this point forward, I will work with whatever party advances the cause of the American people. Then he can invite in Chuck, invite in Nancy, bring in Paul, bring in Mitch, whoever it is that agrees with him, and he'll move forward a little bit. Imagine Trump confronted with the idea that by staying as a Republican, you're going to be squeaking by or possibly losing the election. But by becoming an independent and telling the Republicans, nominate John Kasich, telling the Democrats, go ahead and nominate Elizabeth Warren, let those two split up the vote, and I'll take my bulk of 35 to 40%, in which case I can't lose. It's about the only route that Trump has to win re-election, because the Republican Party given the course of the past 2 weeks, have ended up to here with the president. And the Democrat Party thinks he's the Antichrist. So, between the two, let them have their ways and run as an independent. Your thoughts on that? Let's continue. We'll go to David in Los Angeles, California. David in Los Angeles, welcome to the Bill Cunningham Show. David, please go ahead.
Good morning, good afternoon. How are you?
Good evening to you, too, yes.
Okay, first of all, John McCain is the one that voted no on the plan.
Yep.
If you're going to blame anybody, blame John McCain, who just happened to be a hero for a guy who suffered through Hanoi Hilton, who our current president criticizes all the time.
David, you're there. You're close to Arizona. Isn't it true that when McCain was reelected in 2016, he promised the people of Arizona that he would repeal and replace Obamacare the first chance he got, and that he would be the vote that would make sure Obamacare did not continue as the law? Didn't John McCain make that promise?
Yeah, but I don't live in Arizona. I live in California.
You're close enough. He made that promise. It's next door. I mean, it's fairly close. Nevada is fairly close. Arizonans were promised by John McCain that he would repeal Obamacare. Given the chance, whether it was stupidity or brain cancer or whatever it might be, McCain lied to the people of Arizona.
Okay, he did the opposite of what he said. Okay, I'm going to say is I'm not going to ridicule him in public for it, but that's being as it may. There's another point I want to make. I listen to this program every day, and you guys talk about limited government. And you talk about the Phillips Papers, but there's one document that you guys never talk about. That's the preamble. Now, I look at the Constitution as a framework. As the Bible as a framework. And in that preamble, it has two clauses that no one talks about. Provide for the common defense and promote the general welfare. Now, who promotes the general welfare? The people through representatives. I don't believe that 230 years ago, the people who wrote the Constitution would know what's going to happen 230 years hence and what the people would need. They wouldn't know that the country was going to stretch from the Atlantic to the Pacific. So, I don't care what the Phillips Papers say, because that was just gimmick to get 13 people to sign on to the Constitution. So how is it neither conservative, liberal ever talks about the General Welfare Clause? Neither does Hillsdale, by the way, talk about the General Welfare Clause as to what Congress can do. Not even the Supreme Court, when it came to the Affordable Health Care, even mentioned it. And yet that clause is key to everything that's benefited us. How come? Not even Mark talks about it.
Well, my friend, I would say this, that the Constitution is a wonderful document that provides in its terms for its amendment, and it also provides that the U.S. Congress is the preeminent organism of the federal government. And so the Congress's job is to provide for the so-called general welfare. And as a high school kid, I memorized the preamble. The preamble said, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America." Now, that is the preamble, but it is not part of the Constitution. It is not a clause in the Constitution. It is a precursor to the Constitution, but it is not part of the Constitution. Understand what I'm saying? A preamble is something before the document. It is not part of the document.
Yet, when I look at the General Welfare Clause, no matter how you look at anything else, knowing that they could not be around in 230 years, going through Plessy versus Ferguson, everything else, the Voting Rights Act, knowing they wouldn't be around at the time, they put that clause in. And I remember Chief Justice John Marshall, Marble versus Madison, said, "You guys can't look at what we do to make decisions. You must decide the cases on which they come down." The General Welfare Clause is used to promote Voting Rights Acts. It's used to rule against discrimination, etc. You cannot be a conservative and yet sign on to that preamble. I'm sorry. What do you want to go back to the 1950s? Would you agree that you're a conservative? I should agree to segregation.
David, no. The 14th Amendment deals with the issues of voting rights and equal protection of the laws. There's a different element. The Constitution are the bones, while the laws passed by the Congress are the muscles, the ligaments, and the fiber. And so the laws implement or expand the Constitution, but to have a law passed by the Congress, it must be rooted in the Constitution somewhere, otherwise it's unconstitutional. Sometimes the expansion of rights by the Congress is so great that it's stretched so far that it's not tethered to the Constitution. There cannot be an act of the Congress unless it's pursuant to a constitutional mandate. And the preamble to the Constitution is not part of the Constitution. Article 1, Article 2, Article 3 is the Constitution, but the preamble is not part of the Constitution. And so when the Voting Rights Act and Discrimination Acts were tested constitutionally after 64 and 1965, there were clauses in the Constitution, generally the 14th Amendment, that gave, according to the federal courts, the ability of the Congress to pass enabling legislation on voting rights and barring discrimination that was found rooted in the 14th Amendment.
14th Amendment had never applied to the states. It was always assumed it was applied to the federal government.
No, it's applied to the states by judicial interpretation later. The 14th Amendment and the Bill of Rights have all applied to the states. You may argue it hasn't, but in reality it does. By operation of law, because of the Supremacy Clause in the U.S. Constitution, the federal courts have the supremacy of interpreting what the Constitution says. And so the 14th Amendment is applied to the states through judicial fiat.
Except that the conservatives of the Republican and Democrat Party argued, not only in Plessy, but in Gideon versus Wainwright, other acts by the Supreme Court and Congress that said it does not apply to the states.
It does apply to the states.
Well, that's what the conservatives said. Now, if you're going to say that the Voting Rights Act is fine now and that Medicare is fine, that's not what the conservatives felt in the 1960s and 1950s. They didn't feel applied to the states.
Well, they were, whether you like it or not, and I've been a federal law clerk, whether you like it or not, by Supreme Court decisions, the 14th Amendment and all amendments to the Constitution apply to the states. That has been constitutional. And there may be arguments made in the 50s and 60s and 70s, but over the last half a century, that issue has been worked out. And my friend, David, you're out of here. Thanks for your call. Let's go to Bruce in Boston, the home of Tom Brady, number 12. Bruce, welcome to the Mark Levin Show, hosted by the Great American. Bruce, please go ahead.
Mr. Cunningham, I love listening to you on Sunday nights as well.
Thank you.
My friend, let me tell you, I have voter's remorse right now. I felt like I bought a lemon. It's 90 days later, and, well, I'm stuck with the lemon. How can Donald J. Trump have H.R. McMaster's a globalist in his cabinet? How can he have Ivanka and Jared Kushner, two dyed-in-the-wool Democrats, as his main advisors, and get rid of Bannon and Sebastian Gorka? How can he have hundreds, if not thousands, of Obama holdovers in and around the White House? You tell me how, and this is the big one, you tell me how Debbie Wasserman Schultz's husband is still working for the AG in the Washington district, the same district that is prosecuting her IT man. You tell me how that is possible.
Well, my friend, when Wednesday night happened, and Chuck and Nancy, as called by the president, came out and announced they had a deal on DACA that did not involve a cent for the border wall, I thought, my God, he just gave up his whole card and got nothing for it. If somebody would say to you, my friend in Boston, the number one advisor right now of the president is Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner, wouldn't you say probably?
Yeah, no, there's no probably. That's absolutely.
That's true. How about H.R. McMaster? Yeah.
Globalist.
Yeah, globalist.
He's the one that forced Bannon out.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so I'm looking at this presidency thinking, wait a minute, read my lips, no new taxes. I never had sexual relation with that woman, Monica Lewinsky. Now we got Trump saying that I support DACA. We got Trump saying, essentially, Paris Climate Accord, he's going to announce it tomorrow, I guess, that we're back into the Paris Climate Accord, which is a huge transfer of wealth pursuing a scientific theory that's been debased. And so Wednesday night, Thursday morning, I said, my God, what's happening before my very eyes? And I do not have a good feeling. Now, things may change in the next 90 days. It's possible, although unlikely, they're going to repeal and replace Obamacare. It's possible, not likely, we're going to get tax reform. It's possible, but not likely, We're going to have less government spending, infrastructure, a border fence. It's possible. But the next 90 days, I think, are critical to regain the Trump momentum among normal voters like you and me. We're the ones that make the country work. We work. The degenerates in St. Louis breaking out window fronts are not normal people. They're not thinking right. Something's wrong with them mentally. But the people that work for a living, that have husbands and wives and grandparents and children and grandchildren, that have a 401k, that pay taxes, the normal people in this America elected our champion, Donald J. Trump, and right now I'm disappointed and dismayed. At this point, I'm not jumping off the bandwagon, but I got one foot off the side.
Mr. Cunningham.
Yes.
Nothing's going to get done. And what happens in 2018?
Oh.
It's an election cycle, and you're not going to see any of those clowns in Washington. They're out trying to save their jobs. That's the first thing.
And they are clowns.
And, all of them. All of them are clowns out there.
KLOWN, they're clowns. Clowns.
Absolutely, my friend. And the last point I wanted to make was on Mr. Trump. Tell me one time there was one picture of a Republican pointing in Obama's face like he was being dressed down like a 12-year-old, like that picture of Schumer pointing in Trump's face.
In the Oval Office.
That was so embarrassing. Who points in the president's face, my friend?
Well, can you imagine if Obama was standing in the Oval Office and there was an old white guy with his finger in Obama's face, how would the media play that?
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying, my friend. That's what I'm saying. Mr. Cunningham, always good talking to you.
Well, Bruce, you're a great American. Let's continue with more. Check out MarkLevinShow.com. Check out CRTV.com. Check out Rediscovering Americanism. It's unbelievable. Let's continue with more. If a line becomes available, which it never does, hundreds are on hold, thousands, millions are listening. 1-877-381-3811. Bill Cunningham, the great American, in for the great one, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin.
I'm Billy Cunningham, in for the great one, Mark Levin. I mark my words on this one. I was talking to executive producer Steven Spielberg, also known as Rich Semena, about this. Within about 7 or 8 months, Robert Mueller, the special counsel, is going to announce a bevy of indictments against Trump associates, those in the Trump administration. Then all hell is going to break loose. Because of the stupidity that Trump had in appointing Jeff Sessions to be Attorney General. He set up a string of events, the result of which will be the destruction of the last half of the first term of his presidency, because all the media coverage and the falderall and the Saturday Night Massacre, all the crap that's going to happen, is going to be unbelievable. And the reason I say that is that you cannot have prosecutor's office filled with Clintonistas, who are the Clinton lawyers investigating Donald J. Trump, Paul Manafort, and General Flynn and all the other devotees, and not find something wrong. You cannot have, 27 Democratic prosecutors, dozens and dozens of FBI agents, experts on financial transactions and others, looking at complicated legal transactions, banking rules and regulations covering multi-nations without finding something wrong somewhere. Someone didn't file a form, didn't cross a T, didn't dot an I, didn't fill this form here, had this intent to do something wrong with the tax code. It's impossible. In fact, I contend that if the FBI or the Department of Justice wants to get you, they will get you. During the Obamanista term, 8 years, one thing Obama made sure is that he had 2 stooges of his running the Department of Injustice. And he had Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch. Those 2 stooges made certain that nothing ever got out negative about Obama legally, and all the Obama scandals were brushed under the carpet, no big deal. They knew that. And Obama had his buddy Eric Holder, then his close friend Loretta Lynch, in charge of indictments of the Obama administration. And guess what? Lois Lerner, IRS, no matter what it was, nothing ever happened. As soon as the Trumpster selected Jeff Sessions, who was part of the campaign, then the campaign came under FBI scrutiny. It was a certainty that Jeff Sessions, the lid would be off. Jeff Sessions could not be the Attorney General investigating the campaign of which he was a part. The critical, unforgivable error of our president was selecting Jeff Sessions to be the Attorney General. That guaranteed a special prosecutor, and then Robert Mueller is appointed not to investigate the crook James Comey, but to go after the Trump administration, the Trump campaign, the Trump family, Trump. And he will find something, otherwise he can't justify tens of millions of dollars of cost. Mark my words, on this Monday night, that will happen. Let's continue with more. Bill Cunningham, the Great American, in for Mark Levin.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Our leader's on sabbatical tonight, so Bill Cunningham, the Great American, is here. One last thought. I got a call coming up from Indiana I want to take especially, because think about this. Is it possible that a multi-billionaire business owner can do business in 37 different countries with intricate banking rules, regulations, disclosure forms, tax forms required in each, along with numerous other rules and regulations put out, decisions, and the CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations, etc.? Is it possible that any multi-billionaire businessman with literally 500 companies in up to 36 different countries, 500 different companies in 39 different countries, could not have violated a law somewhere? So if the Clintonistas working for Robert Mueller want to find something on Manafort or Flynn or Ivanka or Jared or the president or Mike Pence, is a boring guy. Mike Pence is really boring. They're going to find it. If you buy the notion that if the IRS and the Department of Justice and the SEC have thousands of investigators, if they're properly motivated to get somebody, they're going to get that person. On the other hand, if James Comey, who's proven to be a tall clown, does not want to find something about Hillary Clinton, guess what? He's not going to find anything. Are you kidding me? 33,000 emails using BleachBit? Are you kidding me? Where's any effort to hide evidence under subpoena? I can't find it anywhere. He's like the piano player in a horror house not knowing what's happening on the second floor. That was Comey drafting the conclusion before the investigation was even nearly completed. That was Comey. So if Comey did not want to find something against Hillary, guess what? He's not going to find anything. Are you kidding me? No reasonable prosecutor would bring these charges. My gosh. You know what I'm saying? Unbelievable. And so what I'm saying to you is, if they want to find something, they will find something. If they don't want to find something, they're not finding anything. Nothing. And are the Clintonista lawyers working for Robert Mueller wanting to find something? Hell yeah. Are you kidding me? They want to get him so bad they can taste it. Whoever finds the dirt on Trump will be on CNN for the next 20 to 40 years, like John Dean is making a living being on CNN. They know where the future is. The future is in the criminal prosecutions, in the books, in the campaign appearances on behalf of the Democrat in 2020, cleaning up Washington, draining the swamp. They got to make Trump. They got to get his carcass and pin it to a wall. And the Clintonistas are going to find that wall, and they're going to find the carcass, and they're going to pin Trump to it. And if they can't get Trump, they're going to get everybody around him. They're going to get Manafort. They're going to get Kushner. They might get Ivanka. They're going to get Flynn. They're going to get everybody. And indict. Who cares if you can convict? The Clintonistas working for Mueller simply want to destroy the presidency of Donald J. Trump. They hate him. He's the Antichrist. The end justifies the means. And all Mueller does is keep hiring more Clintonistas to investigate when there's millions of laws, thousands of rules, multinational corporations, 500 different entities. I'm a simple man. I was in the restaurant bar business, practiced law for 34 years, still practice law, been in this business 34 years. Banks require you to file financial statements. His financial statements read like the Britannica Encyclopedia. They're long. Is there some misstatement in a financial statement somewhere? Of course there is. And they're in the business of finding it, and they want to indict him. And because Mueller and Comey are close, and because Trump fired Comey, Mueller wants to get Trump. And he's letting Comey go. The guy who's leaking private information. Comey is a crook. They're going to let him go. Robert Mueller wants Trump, and he's going to find the evidence to bring Trump. And he's going to refer it to the House Judiciary Committee. That's the name of that tune. Let's continue with your calls. I want to hear from thousands and thousands of others. Let's continue now with Dan in, I think, Iowa. Dan in Iowa, welcome to the Mark Levin Show. Dan, please go ahead.
Hey, yeah, thank you for taking my call. It's just real quick. You kid kind of set me off on the preamble. And if you want to take it at face value, it says promote the general welfare.
Right.
It does not say provide the general welfare. Now, it does say to provide security for basically the United States of America from outside forces, or within, whichever you wish. But the promotion was, that was part of the churches. And I'm not talking about just Catholic or just any Christian or synagogue or anything else. It's from all churches. They did a much better job at welfare than our state.
And Dan, and on that front, the founder said the pursuit of happiness. You don't get happiness. You have the right to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There's not a Department of Happiness to which you go to get happiness. As an American, you have the right to life, liberty, and you have the right to pursue happiness, which is the searching, the process. Get an education, take out a loan, work hard, save your money, delay personal gratification. And so the constitutionals talk about pursuing happiness and provide, not give general welfare, but allow you the possibility of welfare, allow you the possibility of happiness if you pursue it correctly, and that is an excellent point.
Exactly. You and I should get together and talk, because I've got a heck of a lot of things, more things than some of these callers on Hillary Clinton. I've done some research, and boy, I could hear.
Oh, and how about Comey, having investigated her for a year, giving immunity to a lot of the Clintonistas around Hillary? He said no reasonable prosecutor would ever present this case to a grand jury. And you had former federal prosecutors, generally on Fox, for days and weeks after that announcement, coming on the air and saying, these are the charges, here's the violation, here's the evidence. Reasonable prosecutor after reasonable prosecutor provided frequent pieces of evidence to clearly indicate that Hillary Clinton is a walking felon. But because Comey and the FBI did not want to get her, they did not get her. But do they want to get Trump? Absolutely. Absolutely. Dan, we got to go. Thanks for that, but they want to get Trump. Let's continue now with Scott in Warsaw, Indiana, the home of Pence of Indiana. Scott, welcome to the Mark Levin Show. Scott, please go ahead.
Billy, I appreciate the time.
Yes,
hey,
sir.
My question is, when and if Donald Trump were to go independent, how fast would the Republicans, the cloak of the Republican mantle, be stripped away from Donald Trump and he be opened up to being impeached? Because the Republicans would no longer have the need to cover him politically.
It might be good for the Trumpster to wait till the very end to make that major announcement so that any impeachment would take about a year. They don't have time because Trump is not, would you agree with me, Trump is not a Pence Republican?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, he's not. I've known Mike Pence for 20 years since he was a talk show host on WIBC in Indianapolis, congressman, now vice president. By the way, let me tell you a little story. The vice presidency was offered to John Kasich. In April and May of last year, a very close friend of mine who works at Fox had a conversation with John Kasich. And I won't mention the guy's name, but he's close to me and he's close to Kasich. And Trump had decided to make Kasich his nominee because he was from Ohio. He figured Trump in his mind had Florida because he was a Floridian resident, and he needed somebody from Ohio. No one's ever won the presidency as a Republican without winning Ohio. And so this friend of mine goes to see Kasich and says, John, Trump wants you to be his vice president. And Kasich quickly said, under no circumstances, no, I don't like the guy, I don't like what he, no. And this friend of mine at Fox was the reason that John Kasich got 10-year deal at Fox on the weekends. It's what kept his brand alive when he left the Congress, so he owed this guy something. And so this guy says to Governor Kasich, look, this is important, and let's give you a few days to think about it. And my friend flew back to Columbus, goes to the governor's mansion, speaks to Kasich again, who essentially tells him, get the hell out of here, I'm not talking to you anymore, no. On the eve of the convention, my friend gets hold of Kasich once again. All right, John, you're not going to take it. Of course, Pence was offered it. He's going to take it. But we want you, at a minimum, to do an opening speech in Cleveland at Quicken Loans Arena and just welcome the Republicans. Say nothing bad about the Trumpster. If you want, just talk about your principles, why you ran. Say nothing bad, but just welcome the crowd there to have some unity. So Trump reaches out to Kasich to have some unity. He wants the presentation in August at Quicken Loans Arena to look as if he's with a unified Republican Party. My friend said, Kasich said absolutely not. I'm not going to open the convention in my home state. And this was the guy in South Carolina who signed an affidavit under oath promising to support the nominee of the Republican Party, who said repeatedly on stage, you know what, I'm going to support the nominee of the Republican Party. I think it's going to be me, but if it's Donald J. Trump, I will support Trump for the nomination. This guy, Kasich, lied, stabbed my friend in the back from Fox, and then threw a party in Cleveland as the host and didn't attend it. What do you think about Kasich?
Being from Indiana, we don't have much use for Ohio to start with, but I'll tell you what, the whole thing with Kasich and all that makes me mad. Pence, we've seen for a lot of years in Indiana. A lot of people may not like him, but Pence sees the border around the big picture, and he was able to buoy down the rhetoric against Trump and give us kind of a solid helmsman in the process going through the convention and on into the election. A lot of people voted for Trump because of Mike Pence being on board that would not have voted for Kasich.
See, here's the difference. I've been to some Trump rallies. Trump is a rock star. Trump is like Garth Brooks. Trump lights up the arena. You can have a Mike Pence rally with only Mike Pence and have a table of 6 at a restaurant. You have a Trump rally, and there's people lined up around the corner, 15,000 deep to come in. There's a rock star quality to Trump that none of the other Republicans had. He beat 16 so-called qualified Republican country club and cloth coat Republicans to win the nomination. Then he beat the symbol of Democratic modern 21st century politics, who had ubiquitous name ID, was given a Texas El Paso by the feds, and someone on paper that was the most electable candidate maybe to run for public office is Dwight D. Eisenhower. He beat her. I might say he beat her handily. And he beat her because he combined the Mike Pence Republican with rock star qualities that middle-class Americans, especially in West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Iowa, Texas, Florida, Wisconsin, found very attractive. And he's frittering away the conservative Pence voter by his positions on so many public issues, such as DACA, government spending increases, and climate change. Paris, I guess he's going to announce tomorrow, yay or nay. But he's going to keep the hardcore Trump voter because the economy is going to get better. I wait for the Mueller indictments in the next 3 to 6 months to see what the hell happens, and the media at that point will be in complete meltdown. And, Scott, if we end up with Mike Pence as the president, we could do a lot worse.
Absolutely.
All right, we got to run, Mike. Scott, we got to run. Thank you for your call. Let's continue. If a line becomes available, 877-381-3811. Bill Cunningham, the Great American, in tonight for Mark Levin.
Mark Levin.
Bill Cunningham, the Great American, in for Mark Levin. Watch Mark on CRTV.com. Read Mark's books, including Rediscovering Americanism and more. Let's continue with the calls. Let's go to Violet in Santa Barbara, California. Violet, welcome to the Mark Levin Show with the Great American. Violet, please go ahead.
Hi. So I'm calling about the immigration plan that was proposed quite some time ago now.
Yes.
To basically let everybody just stay and not become citizens.
Right.
And, I'm just not okay with that because I fought the amnesty in 1986, and we were promised this was the law. And Trump doesn't have to do anything. All he has to do is enforce this law.
Yeah.
And
Good point.
He can say, you all have 8 weeks to leave the country, finish up your affairs, and then you're deportable. There's nothing that prevents him from saying that. And, you know, I used to be a Republican. I'm not anymore because I really didn't like the wars and the Bush presidency.
Right.
So I don't really care about the Republican Party.
But Violet, what has illegal immigration done to the state of California?
Oh, it's awful. You know, it's like our budget every year here in California is about $110 billion a year. About half of that is public education. About more than 50, maybe 80%, at least here in Santa Barbara, of the children in the public schools are either immigrants or the children of immigrants, some part of whom are illegal. And
well, I'd say 2/3 are illegal.
I think so, but you can't get any numbers on it. And,
of course not.
You know, I don't like to make overblown claims.
Well, I do. I'll say right now the majority are illegal, and the majority of those in the prison system in California are illegal. About 40% of the federal inmates are illegal. About half the emergency room costs are illegals. And you put it all together, and California is going down the tubes because of illegals. And a few days ago, the state senate in California voted to make California a sanctuary state. I thought we fought a civil war on this. States cannot invalidate federal law, but I guess California can. California is in rebellion against the United States of America right now. They're in rebellion.
You're right. And the people like me are, you know, like, what are we supposed to do?
Shut up.
I'm a fifth-generation Californian. I'm not going to leave my home. We're a ranch family, and we're just stuck with it because the federal government will not defend us against this state government, which is completely out of control.
Well, Violet, isn't California not much different than South Carolina that seceded from the Union and said we're not going to follow federal law? How does California get away not following federal law? Isn't that a Civil War offense?
They get away with it because the federal government is not going to do anything about it. And this is what bugs me about Mr. Trump. Is that, see, I didn't vote for a Republican. I voted for his agenda. And he was saying, I want someone to get tough with the rule of law questions, and I want them to revisit Plyler and make it very clear that illegal immigrants do not have the right to be educated in our public schools. I really wanted him to push the agenda and not compromise again.
Violet, we got to go, but you have a great point. You did not vote for a Republican. You voted for Trump's agenda that the Republicans are not putting on his desk. And when he meets with Pelosi and Schumer, agreeing with them on federal spending and agreeing with them on DACA, we got a problem. Phil Cunningham, the great American, in for the great one, Mark Levin. Hi, Billy Cunningham. Did you see the so-called dreamer shouting down Nancy Pelosi last night in San Francisco? We're not talking about shouting down Mike Pence or Donald Trump. The dreamers and the left-wing activists, the anarchists, the Antifa types went to a campaign event with Nancy Pelosi and considered her conservative on immigration issues. So that's kind of where California is. I think about my Violet's call from Santa Barbara about some foreign entity has invaded California and taken over the state. It's like the state's in rebellion against the United States of America by refusing to enforce federal law, much like South Carolina in 1861. So the mentality among many in the Golden State of California reflects that Nancy Pelosi is too conservative in San Francisco to represent those individuals. So what's left of this? What's left of Nancy Pelosi? If there's a political spectrum that goes on the left from Nancy Pelosi to the right, to Mark Levin is on the right. Mark Levin is a conservative's conservative, and Nancy Pelosi is a liberal's liberal. There is another wing of the Democrat Party way left of Nancy Pelosi that finds she is really not liberal enough. She's too conservative. So they shouted down Nancy Pelosi for cooperating with Trump in approving DACA. I'm losing my mind. I can't keep the arrow straight. But that shows you where the mentality is. There are thousands and thousands of Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and anarchists in basically every American city. But in California, there's literally millions and millions of BLMs, Antifa types, and anarchists that basically want to destroy the country. This is not about public monuments of Robert E. Lee. This is about the destruction of the United States of America and the ripping up of the federal Constitution put together by, quote, white supremacists. Because if you're a white supremacist, anything you do, anything you write must be rejected. So the radical left, the leftists to the left of Nancy Pelosi, do not want to tear down the statue. That's an intermediate step. The next step is Stone Mountain in Georgia. The next step is Mount Rushmore. The next step is the United States Constitution written by white supremacists. We can't rely upon anything that has in that document, which means we need a new socialist manifesto. So don't be tricked into thinking that if all the statues are removed of Stonewall Jackson and Beauregard and Jefferson Davis and Robert E. Lee, that if all the statues gone, if any reference to them are taken down, the left does not want to stop there. They want the destruction of the United States of America. That's the goal. What's happening tonight in St. Louis, what's happened the past 3 nights, are efforts by a few thousand to take over the United States of America and to destroy the city of St. Louis, destroy the American economic system, destroy capitalism, tear up the Constitution, make ignorant anyone who voted for Donald Trump. That's the goal. So don't be fooled into saying, okay, let's give the extortionists what they want. And once we pay them the ransom of taking down the Confederate statues, that will end it. Fool, you think it's over? It has just begun. They will not stop until the country is destroyed. The police, the foundation of our country, the difference between anarchy and democracy are eliminated. And that somehow we go back to some agrarian society in which Bitcoin rules the roost. The dollar is irrelevant. Churches are irrelevant. Mosques and synagogues don't matter. And the Constitution, written by white supremacists, we can't follow that anymore. We need something different. That's the goal. Let's continue. Thousands on hold. Millions and millions are listening. Let's continue now with Stu in Baltimore, the home of DeRay McKesson and many others. Stu, welcome to the Mark Levin Show, hosted by Bill Cunningham. Stu, please go ahead.
Hey, Bill. Hey, I was just admiring yours and Doug's little proposal for the immigration plan. But there's missing a few key things. Doug is, anyway. You are correct. First thing you have to do is secure the border.
Number one.
Otherwise, everyone would just come across and get one of them little blue cards.
And it keeps going on and on and on. And once you give amnesty to literally millions of people, that's the calling card to Cubans and Venezuelans and El Salvadorans and Mexicans and whoever else wants to come here, English, Irish, whatever it is, come on down because we got this big amnesty just gone on and just get into the country. We're not going to get rid of you. And guess what? The first time a Democratic president is elected, and it will happen with the Democratic House and Democratic Senate, we're going to have another big amnesty with all kind of rewards. Number one, you must secure the border. Without a border, you don't have a country.
Amen. Not whatsoever. But now, we do have 20-plus million illegals in this country. We all know this. We're not going to deport them all. We know that. I mean, it's numerically impossible to do so with the financial restraints and manpower restraints. But what I propose to add on to this, I like the blue card idea. It's beautiful. But there has to be a time limit. And you give everybody who's in this country 6 months to go to their local registration center and register as an illegal immigrant.
Call them illegal. Come up with some illegal resident, some card that says, this is who you are, here's your picture, here's some sort of eye scan, we know who you are, and then I want a big fine paid, and never, ever, ever become a citizen able to vote or get government benefits. You simply have the right to be here. We know who you are. That's it.
Absolutely. But now, after that 6 month time frame, anyone who's caught in this country that's illegal,
gone.
That's it. You're gone with a lifetime ban for re-entering. I mean, this is essential. You have to set a standard. Say, look, if you don't register and you're caught, you're out. I don't care if you have children here or not. I'm tired of hearing this.
Well, I don't care what your anchor is to this country, you're gone. With a lifetime ban, never to return. Anyone who's caught subsequently coming back into the country, all right, gets a mandatory 10 years prison sentence, and then you're deported again.
At hard labor. Hard labor.
Well, I mean, I wish we could go back to hard labor. But Christ, you think California's crying now. If we did that, they'd really be, we'd have to send them tissues by the hordes. But this is essential. I mean, this is the law and order aspect of it. All right, we know that there's too many just to pick up and we don't have enough people to do that.
And Stu, what would happen if the Trumpster proposed such a thing? The so-called immigrant communities and Hispanics 90% would support this because it would apply to them and they would be protected. It would be widely supported, and even the Democratic Party may have to vote for it because the immigrant community would want that. If you tell the 15 to 20 million illegals that are in this country, you will become a legal resident, you'll never become a citizen, you got to pay a big fine, you got 6 or 9 months to register, and after that, you're deported automatically. That would be supported by the great majority of illegal immigrants in this country. It would give them a path not to citizenship, but a path toward residency, which other countries would never provide them.
Well, let's call it a path to what it really is, legitimacy.
Yeah,
all right?
Whatever. But not citizenship. Not citizenship.
Not citizenship, absolutely not. Like you said, I mean, now they can go to the back of the line,
way back,
and then they can apply to their heart's content.
20 years.
They can go through the normal process.
And most won't.
Everybody who's on the list has already done it.
Most will not do that. They'd be very happy to get a blue card that said, "I'm a legal resident, and these are the rules that I'm going to follow. And God help me if I break a law, if I do whatever." You're thrown the hell out of the country immediately. If you're convicted of a felony, having gotten that card, and you're a resident and you become a criminal, you're thrown the hell out immediately.
Absolutely. And like I said, that would solve almost every problem we have with illegal immigration, with the exception we need that border wall first. Otherwise, we would have a...
Number one is security. But Stu, let me ask you this question. I have read somewhere that Delray McKesson, one of the founders of Black Lives Matter, is paid a huge salary to work in the Baltimore City schools. And if you're in Baltimore, and I'm also told that Baltimore has hundreds of murders because police are standing down, and that there's bike racks in Baltimore that can't be operated anymore because all the criminals are taking the bikes. What is the status of Baltimore after the Freddie Gray incident?
Listen, we hear a lot of people talk about California and how liberal California is. People have not seen liberalism until they came to Baltimore, until they came to the state of Maryland. We have a governor, a Republican governor, who caves to these liberals, to save his job without making a fight at every turn in the road. Baltimore is, it's a nightmare in the city of Baltimore.
Isn't it like New York, San Francisco, Chicago? You can't find a Republican with a search warrant. There's no Republicans, right? You can't be a Republican in Baltimore.
Yeah, absolutely, because that's the only people going to get in trouble in this state. And it's a crying shame, Bill. If anybody who comes to visit Baltimore, they see it, and the police do nothing.
Of course, if you're a cop, not just in Baltimore, if you're a cop in Chicago, New York, if you're a cop in Austin or Denver or Cincinnati, you're conditioned now to stand down, do nothing aggressive, turn the other cheek, and don't be proactive. The cops in St. Louis are now being told, stand down, don't chase somebody black, don't do anything wrong, we can't afford this. So what's happening now, Black Lives Matter has indirectly caused the death of thousands of African Americans because proactive policing is done.
And these criminals are emboldened, they're hyper aggressive, and it's plain as the nose on your face. And these politicians in this city will do nothing to jeopardize their job. They could care less about the public. They could care less about anything but their salary that they're getting out of us every month.
And Stu, what about Marilyn Mosby, the clown female prosecutor who indicted those 6 cops? Has she been thrown out of office yet?
Hell, she's hailed as a hero.
Hell no. Hell no. A hero. She's a hero because she's brought about the destruction of the black section of Baltimore by herself by indicting cops and freeing criminals and giving criminals room to riot. I mean, Marilyn Mosby is a joke.
I know, but she sent a clear message to Baltimore City Police. All right? Fuck with her, and she will indict you.
Yeah, you don't mess with her. Well, Stu, we got to run. Thanks for your call. Let's continue with more. Once again, check out Mark Levin at marklevinshow.com or crtv.com. Read his book, Rediscovering Americanism and more. Pleasure to be here. Only about 15 minutes remain. Bill Cunningham, the great American, in for the great one, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin.
Let's continue with more. We have Mark in Queens, New York. Mark in Queens, welcome to the Mark Levin Show. Mark, please go ahead.
Good evening, Bill.
How you doing?
I have a proposal to make. I remember at one of the rallies, Donald Trump in front of thousands kept screaming, "I promise I will never, ever, ever lie to the American people." Why don't talk show hosts just constantly play that over and over again, and then right next to that say he's caving in on DACA? Let him answer to that. He loves tweeting. Let him answer. Let him answer to people finally. You have him on a very clear-cut a clear-cut lie, so let's hold him to it.
How about this? This is off the AP wire, which is about a third of the time. According to Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, the agreement made with President Donald J. Trump contains not a dime for Trump's wall, and the Dreamers are put on a glide path toward U.S. citizenship, according to Nancy Pelosi. Now, does that sound to you like something the candidate Donald Trump would agree to? Does that sound... I mean, you tell me. I mean, is that what, build that wall? Who's going to pay for it? Mexico? Does that sound like Trump? But according to Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, your U.S. Senator, they struck a deal with the president where DACA continues, no wall, no e-check, verify, there's continued blood, genetic immigration, all these things that we ought to change. The president said during the campaign, I would never lie to you, I would talk about DACA, repeal and replace Obamacare, less government spending, we got more, tax reform doesn't exist, there's no infrastructure bill, there's no border fence, Paris Climate Accord is going to be rescinded, I guess. Rex Tillerson yesterday on Face the Nation said we're open to renegotiating the Paris Climate Accord. What significant promise has Trump made that actually has been fulfilled?
Nothing, except for the Supreme Court justice.
Neil Gorsuch. That was fabulous. However, I'm waiting for these things, and I got one foot off the boat. I'm about to jump, but I'm not there yet because we got 3 more months till the end of the year. But there's so few legislative days remaining because the Congress doesn't work that I'm not sure these big things can be done at all. I have no confidence it'll be done. And when Trump can lie about immigration, he can lie about anything. Immigration is the reason he's the president. And the first chance he has with DACA, if you're going to play the DACA card, okay. But these are the 4 things I want. I want money for the border fence. I want to e-verify with employers. I want to change immigration based upon blood. And the 4th thing I want is an immigration policy based upon merit, not genetic influences. So you give me those things, and we got a deal. And that's what I would do. I would trade DACA for those other things that would stop illegal migration from the third world into America. But Trump gave it all away. Why would he do that if he's the art of the deal, the great negotiator? Why?
100%, I'm with you. Just keep playing that tape. It'll get to him. He'll have to tweet something about it.
Well, Mark, I will never lie to you again. I'm going to ask Richard Semena, the producer of the Mark Levin Show, to find that tape somehow of Trump promising never to lie to you. And I want to know if this is a lie. Is this a significant change in the president's position from the candidacy until last Wednesday? The answer is yes. And on federal spending. Mark, I ask you this question. If you agree with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer on federal spending, how is that not a problem?
100%.
It's a big problem.
100%.
And he said we're going to have a balanced budget. Okay, we got a balanced budget. No, we don't. We owe north of $20 trillion, and every day the federal government borrows fresh about $2.5 billion every day. So, Mr. President, you promised this and you delivered that. Explain to me why we're wrong. I want to hear some explanation from the Trumpster who tweets on a regular basis why you and I are wrong. Would you like to hear that?
Yeah, I would love it.
Let's go. Fine. Instead of talking tomorrow at the UN, I want to know about DACA. I want to know about repeal and replace Obamacare. I want to hear about infrastructure. I want to hear about less government spending. I want tax reform. I want to get out of the Paris Climate Accord. I want a border fence. That's what I need. All right, we got to go. Tell you what, I had a pleasure tonight speaking to you on behalf of Mark Levin. He'll be back with you tomorrow. It's always a pleasure to do this. I want to thank Richard Cimenta live in New York and more. Let's continue. Bill Cunningham tonight in for the great one.